Blessed awaken. Blessed sunrise. Hey, baby primal lights. How are you doing today? Yes, this is Jasmine, the mystic eye with self realization. Okay, so today's topic is the self. What is the self? Right? What is the self? Because, we'll say myself. We're always talking about ourself. Myself, ourself. What is the self? Okay. So, the self is that has no name, that can't be explained. It's the pure, true reality, unassociated, formless. The self allows all creation to shine. And from the invisible comes the visible. And our true and real self is the primal light. Alright? The primal light. What is the Supreme Self? Right? The Supreme Self is the primal light self that first emerges from the manifest primordial self. The self-supreme primal light replicates the manifest replicas of herself. She creates the first non-dual being, Brahman. Pure luminous consciousness has her mind. She self-replicates as the primal guru, the supreme teacher. And then she also self-replicates herself as a feminine principle, Supreme Self, Supreme Ra. Supreme Ra self-duplicates herself as Anum Ra, and Anum Ra becomes the world. So all the witness self arise out of the primal light, which is all the souls, as a fractal baby primal light. So this is the reason why I say, hey, baby primal light, because the soul is a baby primal light. As a primal light, a fractal self through the Supreme Ra. After they merge into the pure luminous consciousness, all of the souls, the witness self, write out their destiny with Supreme Ra. The witness self then manifests the personal self, which is the baby self, which is the baby seed to explore and grow, which is the personal self, the soul, the spirit. The soul manifests, bring into being the spirit. So the Supreme Self is really all of creation wearing this guise. Alright? So let's look at the manifest non-dual self. So I use the infinity symbol here. So over here we have the primal light, which is the light is the non-dual because it's aware of the consciousness. This is the consciousness here. Here, this is consciousness, which is what we're building on because we can see the things that we're building. The light allow for consciousness to shine, for whatever consciousness bring into being, for us to see. Because remember, consciousness is the mind of the world, and everything that we build is built on consciousness. And the energy is the self-consciousness, it's the masculine principle, it's the magnetic particles. So if you notice that everything that is built is magnetic. So we're going to go to the atom. So when you go back to the core of everything, you go to the atom, you see that in the atom there is a magnet. It's magnetic. Dark matter, its positive charge is dark. It's the moon, it's the mind, it's thought and sound, and it's creation. Everything is created from consciousness. Now from the primal light is the self. This is over here. It is the feminine principle. It's electrical particles. It is a dark energy. It is a negative charge. And it's the light. It's the sun. It's the heart. It is stillness. And it is void. So while this is void, this is creation. Consciousness is everything that we are creating. Right? So from a primordial egg to creating a human being. This is how the self journey. And the self, know that is the soul. The soul is the one, when it comes in the body, the soul makes itself into duality. And it's the one that makes the baby self, which is the spirit that's also in the body. And it is the one that makes the body. It's the one that goes into the womb and does all the things. Yeah, to bring that baby into being. So, Remember that we are like the atom. We are both parts of the consciousness and the primal light. So this is our dual nature. There's the self-consciousness and the self, right? And then when we are aware of each other, like it's here, we are in non-dual self. So this is the goal of what we want to attain. We want to get to the state wherein that we have the void between the self and the self-consciousness, so that we can be non-dual between the self and the consciousness, so that we can be non-dual. All right. So self-atom. So know that the neutrons represents the primal light, the protons, which is the magnetic particles, represent the pure consciousness, and it is a positive charge. The electrons represent the electrical particles, and it is the primal light, which is the self. It is the self, right? All the baby primal lights. So we're called the self atom. So when the self existed, it existed first as the self atom. And so what it did was the witness self hit the self atom, and create like a nuclear fusion. And that's where the explosion, and scientists call that the Big Bang, because they can see the effect of it. And so from that, this is what the unmanifest self spreads out into the non-dual self. And from the unmanifest, it manifests itself. So this manifest self here, and that from this manifest self, this is where the primal light arises from. All right, and so the self supreme primal light arises as the supreme witness. Let's rest this up here. I don't know if you can see that, right? As the supreme witness, and self replicates and create a mind, because the self wanted to create. So the primal light wanted to create, and this is the reason why the witness self, create the nuclear fusion with the self atom, the pure atom. The self is called a pure atom. The self atom is the pure atom, right? So the self atom, the pure atom. And so because the self wanted to, because the primal light wanted to create, and so the primal light first create a mind, because you need the mind to create. The primal light is the neutral aspect. Does not have any positive charge or negative charge. The primal light has no charge. All right. So this is reason why when the consciousness beings, they wanted to take over the world, they wanted to get the primal light. So the primal light self-replicates and makes a mind for herself, and that mind became known as Brahman. Brahman is our mind, and it's a non-dual consciousness. All right, and the Brahman self-replicates, and then that self-replication of the mind becomes the mind of the world. So the self always explore in all the different myriads of forms. So they do the dual and the non-dual. So Brahman is non-dual, and then the mind is replica became Brahma, and the Brahma now becomes duality. So Brahma now, the light become obscure, and that consciousness now is what the world is built on. The world is built on consciousness with the light obscure, while Brahma, the mind of the supreme primal light, is non-dual consciousness, and the light shines and is in awareness. It has its full sun. All right, and so all the selves, they always duplicate themselves, always make a duplicate of themselves, and they always rise. When the self rises, its self-consciousness also rises. So when the self supreme primal light arises, our self-consciousness, the primal self-consciousness, arises too. So that's our dual nature. Because remember, it's That's a dual self, right? In non-dual. All right. So her primal self-consciousness arises, right? But all the self enter the world individually. They don't join together. The primal self-consciousness enter the world, and the primal light remains the primal light, and then Brahman his primal self-consciousness also arises. His self-consciousness also arises, and then the primal light self-replicates again, and makes the primal guru. So the primal guru becomes the supreme teacher, and the primal guru also make babies of itself. So it has all the baby gurus that is within every soul that comes out of it. Every witness self, and it lays dormant within us. And once we on the journey to unify ourselves, the primal guru arises up. The baby guru arises up, and then later on we can call on the primal guru to help us with distinguishing the mind, the ego, back into the self. And the self-consciousness for the primal guru is Osiris, and Osiris has evolved from when he came into and played the roles, because all of the Supreme Selves and all of us were playing roles. Osiris became Shiva Shambho and became a pure being, so he's non-dual. And then the next self-replica that the primal light did was Supreme Ra, and Supreme Ra as a feminine principle, and Supreme Ra became the governor and the manager of the world, and she's the one that does all the managing the world through sleeping, dreaming, and waking. Because she make a self replica of herself called Anum Ra, and Anum Ra becomes the world, and of course the Brahma, which is the consciousness, becomes her mind, sleeping and dreaming up the world. So Supreme Ra, her self consciousness, rises up and is Set, and Set was Osiris's brother in Egypt, and then the primal light now, our personal self became Isis, and all the baby self is all of the self, all of the witness self, all of the souls are as a primal light, baby self, baby primal lights, right? And so the witness self, the soul, is a baby primal light, and the witness self is the one that creates, bring into being the personal self, the spirit. Is a the personal self is a fractal of the witness self, the baby soul or baby seed. And so the self-consciousness is the one that brings into being it, because it has another self-replica, which is Gabriel, the archangel Gabriel. So because remember the primal self-consciousness have three self-replicas: Set, Gabriel, and Osiris. And also the primal light has three self-replica: Brahman, the primal guru, and Supreme Ra. And so the self-consciousness, the primal self-consciousness, personal self, is Shiva, which was Horus. So Shiva is Horus, and all the baby self are the gods. Alright? And also the archangels are the child consciousness, which are self-replica of the primal light, but they come through Shiva Shambho. And all the gods come through Shiva, and that's why Shiva is the one that is responsible over all the gods, and Shiva Shambho is responsible over all the archangels. All right, so that's about the first aspect of from the self atom, from how the self came into existence, and just those supreme selves. So I want to thank you so much for joining me. This is Jasmine, the Mystic Eye with Self-Realization. And this was the self. What is the self? We talked about that. The manifest non-dual self. And I also explained how the self came into being from when the primal light arises up to, and also that we also have the self-consciousness that rises. With every self that rises up, self-consciousness arises. And so thank you so much. To the primal life, I bow to the primal guru. Higher self, I bow to the eternal truth. Into the light, I bow to the primal guru. Guru, higher self, I bow to the eternal truth. To the prime, I bow to the true wisdom. I bow to the great supreme wisdom. I bow to the great supreme intelligence. Self-supreme primal light. Hail to the primal light. Hail to the primal light. I call on the primal light. I call on the light throughout the ages. I call on the true light. I call on the transparent light, self-luminous light. Hail, 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 hail to the primal light. I call on the primal wisdom. I call on the wisdom throughout the ages. I call on the true wisdom. I call on the great transparent wisdom within. Hail, hail, hail to the primal light, self-supreme primal light. I call on the primal light. I seek refuge in the primal light. I seek refuge in the eternal truth. Into the light. Into the light. I am one with the primal light. I am the eternal truth. I am Supreme Self. Hail, 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 hail to the primal light. Hail to the primal light. Hail, hail to the light throughout the ages. Hail to the true light. Hail to the transparent light. Hail to the self-luminous light. Hail, 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 hail to the primal light. Hail to the primal light. Hail to my good